Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today for the fourth time is dear friend of the show, Patric Miller. This is going to be Two Pats in a Pod, Volume 3. I know that was confusing. Patric Miller, welcome to the show. I've taken a little bit of a 2-week hiatus from the podcast since the election. To be honest, I was just a little bit burnt out, needed some time off. And I reached out to you and you agreed to do this on kind of short notice. For anybody listening that's unfamiliar, if I haven't seen what you've done in the past, Two Pats in a Pod was something that came up. Originally, that was going to be the podcast. Me and you talking about different things. We talked about this with you in the barber chair. And, we're busy lives and it's difficult to create any type of two-person show. It's a lot easier to get it done on my own. So that's the direction I went. But you're gracious enough to be a guest here and there, and I always enjoy our conversations. So, Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. I just got my hair cut, so, that was one of those things where, you've been very gracious in your barbershop activities to be able to allow us to still come in and be very safe and not look like, 1960s country western stars. So it's good.
A lot of people are waiting a lot longer between cuts, that's for sure. So I'm doing a lot of fix-it cuts. We call them quarantine cuts. Yeah, it's been an interesting year. We're all ready for this vaccine. Hopefully, we'll talk about that in a bit. Before we get started, I want to mention a shout out to my title sponsor, Oregon Cash Flow Pro. Oregon Cash Flow Pro offers free money management advice videos on YouTube. So make sure to, on Facebook, go follow Oregon Cash Flow Pro. And then on YouTube as well, subscribe to Oregon Cash Flow Pro. Shout out to James Barber. So let's just get started. It's right. So it's been 3 weeks or going on 3 weeks since the election. It feels like it's been longer. You and I had many conversations on the show at different points. I think you've actually been on more than 4 times now that I think about it. You did the panel that we did on the impeachment as well.
Right.
But,
right.
We kind of ripped into you because you were talking about the moderate, how that was the thing that the country needed at the time. And you were right, so I'm here to eat crow. So tell me, no, it's fun. So tell me a little bit about why it was early on in the process that you thought Biden, even though he was doing bad, pre Jim Clyburn's endorsement and then South Carolina, why you thought Biden was going to pull out the victory. Tell me about why.
Well, it's interesting is that I was writing regularly on a blog called crankyoldguy.com and was very active in the last election. This election, I realized that it was almost spitting in the ocean in a lot of respects because I had so many different people in different, media that I was having to deal with. I just stopped writing. The last thing I really wrote that was talking about this issue had to do right after the Iowa election or Iowa caucuses. And at that point, I laid out a point-by-point reason why Biden was going to win, going back to the previous election, going back to how you can't trust the polls, but also saying clearly it's going to come down to 6 states and it's going to be a 3% run at the end of this thing. I don't care what the polls say. And it was a little creepy, quite frankly, to go back and read that and realize how close I was, with the exception of a couple of states being different. I did not predict Georgia. I did not predict Arizona. But what it came down to was that anyone that was there had to go out and actually campaign in those 6 states, which they did. That was something Hillary did not do. They actually had to reach out and find the moderate voters that swung over to Trump away from Hillary for whatever reasons those were. And he did that. He found a way to do that. And he had to be very careful to distance himself away from the socialism bit, because that is something that's one of the hot buttons that the Republicans use to energize their base. And we saw it happen time and time again. And my biggest concern was it was going to end up being far too left and we were going to get hammered. But if Biden could go and make it work, it was going to be great. The turning point for me actually was Virginia, because that was the first primary that they had where there was it wasn't I can't remember what the term is. You could vote openly. If you were a Democrat, you could vote for a Republican, et cetera, et cetera.
Open primary.
It wasn't like ours, which was the elections here are closed primaries. So there, Biden killed it. That was his first really big one. Yeah, everybody talks about South Carolina, but Virginia was the one where he really just annihilated everybody. And it was because he had a ton of Republicans that came over and voted for him. So what we saw, I think, was a slow but sure migration of Republicans that voted for Biden because they could. They could, in their heart, realize there's a way to make this happen. And frankly, as we can look at it now, he's the only candidate that could have won at this point. And I'm not a huge Joe Biden fan, but he's the only candidate that could have won.
Right. I noticed your hat. Your hat. It says "By Dawn." So a lot of this election was more about Trump than it was about Biden. And I think for a lot of Republicans, the Lincoln Project was pretty effective. That was what's his face, Steve. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's the one that was the campaign manager for John McCain. That is one of the founders of the Lincoln Project, and those ads that were anti-Trump.
Well, and Kellyanne Conway's husband.
Right. George
Conway.
Yeah.
That's
and these ads, I have to give them credit. One of the things in your bio that I'm going to be putting in the show notes, I copy pasted from last time, is that you talk about country over party, and it's something that we have lost right now on the current Republicans as a whole, is that it's all about Donald Trump. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk more about the division in the country. Right now, I kind of want to recap the election, even though we've done this ad nauseum. It's just, I wanted to kind of set the tempo for our discussion with a little talk about it. So I think everybody knows that the reason that Biden was able to prevail was that there was a serious coalition built of all the progressives turned out, didn't protest vote, all of the moderates, obviously, that were already supporting him. And then you had, the greatest turnout for the black vote. And then also you had moderate Republicans that were anti-Trump or that were just fed up with Trump. A lot of people voted for Trump. Still, I think it's alarming to see that 70 million people or 71 million people still voted for him. But I think there's different reasons people will hold their nose because they care only about one thing, and it's their pocketbook. And to them, they believe that it's the economy it's a big part of it. I think it's more.
Yeah, I just divide them up. Yeah. If you want to go, we have a little bit of a delay, a little bit of lag there, so I don't mean to talk over you. If I'm talking over you, it's just because I want to talk over you. So anyway, I'm joking. Anyway, I divide them up into three chunks. I divide Republicans up into three chunks. I have the pocketbook voters, which is clearly some of them. They are the folks that are, my 401k looks great. I am a Republican. I want to keep that going. That's one chunk. The evangelical, I'm finding an excuse to vote against the Democrats is the middle chunk, and they're the ones that will find an issue, a hot button, whether it's abortion or gay rights or whatever. It's the same people that you can divide a room up with every single time. Those people can't back anything up with Trump. That's the insane point, is that they really can't support Trump as a Christian or anything else like that. But it comes down to their own thing of knowing that, well, this is easier. I'm going to go this direction. This is the hot button that gets me going. And then I hate to say this, but I saw a ton of this in even my own high school groups and things like that. There's a group that's a third of the people that are Second Amendment whack jobs carrying around the ARs and everything else. But that group is mostly put off by the intelligence of the left. And I know that's a bold statement, but these people are relatively illiterate. They do not follow any of the actual issues that are taking place, and they are easily manipulated into team sport mentality. My team, my team, my team. And those guys are the ones that are showing up on the doorsteps of the state houses, et cetera. But it's a small percentage, quite frankly. I mean, it's
I wouldn't even
maybe a third.
You say a third, and I think that the Second Amendment wing of the Republican Party is a broad swath. There's a lot of different people. I want to make that caveat that there's a lot of different people that in that group. Because I mean, I have one who is not only a friend, is a sponsor of the show, Jake Williams. I don't know how he votes, to be fair. We don't really go that deep, but I know that he's a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. He may not follow the issues closely, but he is a reasonable, sensible human being. You know, so I agree with the basis of what you're saying.
But he's in the middle swath there.
Right. And he's also willing
He's in that middle swath, Patrick, because the middle swath it picks one issue and drives that truck home. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how he votes. I'm just throwing it out there that there's people. We're going to talk about this more when we get into the division, because we're going to talk about how it's going to be possible to heal some of these wounds and bridge the divide. But we'll get to that in a bit. You know, one of the things about this election is that there's only few Republicans that are calling Biden president-elect. And so I think there's like 4 or 5 now. Mitt Romney's been very vocal with his, disdain for what Trump is doing, because it's dividing the country like no other. The Trump transition, I mean, what kind of damage do you think it's doing to the at least the first 100 days of Biden's administration by Trump being unwilling to transition?
Well, here's the thing about Biden, and one of the reasons I got behind him is that he's been through this before. The transition they went through in 2008 during the middle of what was almost another depression. These guys hit the ground running. They have teams already put together. They've been doing this for months, quite frankly, not weeks, but months. They have teams put together for all of the things that are the hot buttons. They're not getting the actual daily reports, but let's be honest, Trump never read them anyway. It doesn't matter. So I think that the damage is more, from an optics point of view for the general public. It's like, we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up. Hey, he's our president, blah, blah, blah. That part of it is damaging. But at some point on January 20th, there's going to be a transition, and the Republicans and everybody else are going to have to do what they're going to do. The concern, the one I keep hearing about over and over again, is the security briefings. But I have a sneaking suspicion with the number of former Republican security heads that are on the Biden wagon at this point. I'm guessing that he's getting a lot more information. I don't think it's as damaging as we think it may be. But I think that what we're going to see is Biden hitting the ground running with a full cadre of groups and committees and everybody ready to get to work, because it's going to be a shit show. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah. And it was going to be anyway. I mean,
yeah,
and it's just so frustrating, because Trump's whole strategy is to just destroy the traditions in American government. And so when you saw with Bush and Obama, who couldn't be more different as presidents, that they were chummy together, that works for the Trump narrative that, the elite. So it's like, if you go against what he's about, then he just says, yep, you're trying to destroy the country. And it's like, what are you talking about? This has been what the country's been. So it's funny because progressives, there's nobody that the Republican Party hates more than progressives. You call them socialists, whatever you want to say. Yet they want to completely change the tradition of America into being something different. It's so mind-boggling that they can look at it like, oh my God, how dare these people threaten? I mean, I guess slowly America's progressed into this kind of different thing, but that's what it was designed to do, is to be constantly working towards improving a union.
We're being forced into it by circumstance. We're not being proactive. That's the problem we have, is that whether it's climate change or swapping over our economy, or going back to the reality of a global economy that we had before, Trump tried to dismantle it. These are the changes that are going to happen because we're being forced into them. We're looking at serious end of world stuff over the next 30 to 50 years if we don't really get on it now. And some people say it's too late, but the Trump thing, I think we're going to look back on it as a complete abomination, and it's going to be, it's going to be talked about for a long time. But Trump is all about Trump. He's about chaos and creating chaos and getting good ratings and creating his own reality. And that's it. The more that this comes out, that he doesn't go to briefings. He hasn't been to a briefing for the coronavirus in 4 months or something now? 3 months, 4 months? It's been a long time, 100 days at least. So, we're talking about a administration that's going to come in that not only listens and is proactive and has real plans and will be able to take anything that Trump gives them. I mean, I've blown out what the stupid term is that he uses for the miracle that he's doing for the vaccinations.
Oh, Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah. There we go. The warp speed. Yeah. So the deal is that, he set free a bunch of people, but he also had Bill Gates and a bunch of other people behind it. And they did what they said they're going to do off the reservation. What to Trump's benefit, or what I will give him credit for, it's the only thing I'll give him credit for, is that he got the FDA to blow up all of their regulations and fast track the approval. That's really all he's done at this point.
Which isn't without
the rest of his team has been actively involved.
Right. Which isn't without its risks. I mean, we could talk about the vaccine and about how scary it is that they're, bypassing some of the traditions of testing, of letting it all play out, the trial, process.
Yeah.
But one thing you kind of mentioned about the global economic setup, is there anything do you believe even a sliver of truth in what Trump says about, we've been getting bullied maybe by people across the world, especially namely with the UN. He talks about the UN and he talks about how we pay way more than our fair share of it. Do you believe that there's any benefit to the type of rhetoric? I don't know how to word this. I mean, obviously the answer is no when it's coming out of him because the way he approaches it. I guess, is there anything on a positive note about Trump's economic plan that we can learn from and take and then, alter to make it less aggressive?
Well, yeah, no, the what you take away from Trump's economic plan is that it didn't work. We have the highest deficit of all time. We've just done nothing but piss off all of our trade partners. The China thing is interesting, and that we're going to have to adapt something there. But the fact is, Trump's own family manufactures everything they do in China. We're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. I mean, I'm being pragmatic here. I'm not saying this is what I want, but the fact is, we're never going to come back to American manufacturing. There's not a thing we buy today at all that isn't a textile, maybe, but anything electronic, any car, anything, that all of the parts are made in China or Indonesia or whatever. They're assembled here, maybe. Sometimes they're assembled here, but that's not manufacturing in the old school. That doesn't bring the back. That doesn't do anything. The problem we're going to have, really, that I think we have to deal with China isn't trade embargo. It's their fossil fuel use. It's the way that they manufacture all this stuff. And the reason that we're able to keep everything so inexpensive over the, as far as the trade part, getting stuff there and back, is because they don't do anything that's safe or anything that's good for the world. So between China and India, there's going to have to be some changes, at some point. How that plays out, I don't know. I do know that it's a world economy. We are tightly wound, and the fact that Trump completely disconnected from the European Union and it's abominable, where we ended up. So that stuff, the good news is the flags of happiness went up to such a degree the day after the election, where all of the EU guys came out and, congratulated Biden. The Chinese congratulated Biden. Everybody congratulated Biden. And the only people that didn't were the likely suspects, for the potentates that Trump's buddies with. It's like they don't want to see that. So it's going to be interesting.
I'm sure that the Philippines and Brazil, they're like, this is not good. Like dictators.
Putin and Turkey, right. And yeah. Right.
Putin actually is, it sounds like, stepping down. We'll see. You can never believe anything, but there's been some talk of Parkinson's. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so you would
what's the gift from riding shirts around, or riding horses without shirts in the steps?
I would imagine that's what he does every day, not just that one photo. No, but so the transition has been, or not the transition, the claims of voter fraud and all that stuff has been really interesting to watch. Rudy Giuliani. I wanted to talk about Rudy Giuliani, this monster of a human being. One of my friend's wife, Julia, had posted something that I thought was really funny, that she said, so we're just supposed to act. I mean, she's like, every day something new, and we're just supposed to act when the president's personal attorney's head is leaking, that we're just supposed to be like, yep, this is normal. This is normal, So he, his hair dye was dripping down the side of his face, and it made for a pretty graphic photo that is HD has not been good to Rudy Giuliani. That's for sure.
I said that it was the last shred of decency leaking out of his mind. That was it. He had none. No, the funny thing is that, people, I go with these trends, I go with these gut feelings, but they're usually based on facts. They're usually based on stuff. I am relatively pragmatic when I come to a decision, and I am apolitical, believe it or not. I'm not, as you and I have talked about, I hate both parties at this point. Without getting off on a tangent, I'm not wild about Pelosi coming back, but whatever the case is, the point is, every time I see that Rudy Giuliani is in charge of something, I just plain giggle and rub my hands together, because I know that it's going to blow up and be just a complete massacre of anything that makes sense. Going back to Putin, when Putin actually came out and disavowed all of the Ukrainian stuff that Rudy was trying to push, that was an interesting little twist that a lot of people didn't pick up on. But he was just like, no, come on, this doesn't even hold up in Russian standards.
Right. I mean, he's insane. I don't know. I mean, just the fact
if we wanted to do this, we'd kill these people.
Just the fact that the former mayor of New York City is the president's personal attorney, it seems like such a step down. He's tried to run. I mean, he's tried to run for president. I mean, he's the epitome of a goon. At this point where he's just like, I'm just going to go do the dirty work, and he'll just lie, whatever. I mean, politicians lie. That's one thing, but God, like you said, when you watch Giuliani, you're like, okay, whatever he's saying, I'm going to think the opposite. And it's that simple. I mean, cause he's so out of control.
Well, plus, it's going to be an absolute maelstrom of insanity. The stuff that comes out of his mouth it's not even up to Trump standards. Trump usually finds one or two talking points, because that's about what his brain can handle. But he'll do one or two talking points, and then he'll hammer them home. It just goes and goes and goes. He never lets go. A phrase will stick, and it'll just go forever. Giuliani, it's like this. Somebody's feeding him this crazy, irrational stream of stuff, and he's just blowing it out. And he doesn't, I'm not sure he even hears what he's saying half the time, because it's hilarious. My cousin Vinny thing was funny, but it wasn't nearly as bizarre as when he got, going off into the Venezuelans. And it's like, good Lord, dude. I mean, really? You think our security is that bad, huh? Okay,
it gets out there.
And you're in charge.
So that brings me to a good segue into the division in the country. I was going to do this in the other order, because we're going to talk about moderates versus progressives, but let's talk about Democrats versus Republicans first. One of the things with Giuliani that I wonder, and with all of these lawsuits that have been thrown out and laughed out of court, it sounds like, by
the thing from Pennsylvania that yesterday
the
was
Trump
brutal.
team,
My God.
bringing these lawsuits, and the courts are like, what are you doing? Like, you have zero evidence here. And then Giuliani, just goes and babbles about these allegations. Do you think that they think that it's going to stick, or do you think that they're just trying to create a diversion so that they know the end game is that Biden is going to be appointed, and then Trump, it's everybody's view is that he's probably going to create his own TV channel, which is just, it's just going to, I hope he does. Well, I don't know. I'm torn, I guess. This is where I'm at with this, because you've got this QAnon section of the Republican Party that has basically been told all these lies. And that's where a lot of this Rudy Giuliani stuff comes from. It comes from QAnon type stuff, far right extremist websites.
It's Bannon and Stephen Miller.
Right, Bart,
that's
exactly.
Yeah.
But they've basically painted, I've talked to people that I respect, and I've had some serious arguments on social media, all of us have, with people that are more conservative that I respect. And they, at the end of the day, when they're talking to me, they're like, yeah, but Democrats are evil. And I'm like, how can you say that? Now, I understand this comes a little bit as hypocrisy, because if I never say Republicans are evil, I'm at least willing to acknowledge that their political goal, the reason that they're executing the plan that they're doing, is because they have a goal. They have an end game, and it's power or whatever it is. My point being, they've convinced themselves. How do you combat people that believe in there's no facts, and they believe that Democrats eat children, like quite literally? You know what I mean? There's no combating it.
You can't. No, you can't. We're going to kind of cross into a couple of topics here, but the reality is I've lost a couple of really good friends really good friends, like 30-year friends over QAnon. My daughter has a friend that has gone completely off the rails that we cannot, she's just said, okay, we're not going to talk politics at all because I get too upset. So that we can be friends in every other way. That's all one thing. Here's the thing. You started the conversation, you started this topic by saying Democrats versus Republicans. That doesn't exist anymore. It's just not there.
Yeah.
The Republicans are too divided. They're too fractionalized in regards to what I call legitimate Republican Party folk, which are the old conservative types. As an example, I have a friend of mine, Jack Roberts, who was high up in the Oregon State administration. I believe he was in charge of, he was involved. He was all over the place. Jack has been around. He was a county commissioner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He is a dyed-in-the-wool, real deal Republican who did not vote for Trump, could not vote for Trump. He and I have had some really nice exchanges. We believe a lot of the same things. As I get older, I become more kind of conservative, middle of the road. And he's, the Trump thing is just blown up anything that he can do in regards to accepting this new form of Republican. So that guy isn't what you're calling the Republicans. The Republicans are the batshit crazy folk that are so stuck in one way or another that they can't come out. The Democrats have always been divisive. They've always been able to set their primary, save the whales, whatever it is that they're that jacked up about, that's their primary thing in life. They can set it aside enough to get somebody elected. What we're seeing now is some division in the Democratic Party that is becoming deeper and deeper and deeper, and not unlike the QAnon folks on the other side. Because what I'm hearing from a lot of the I'm going to call them uber progressive, is that it's a conspiracy and the fix is in and we'll never win and these guys are doing this and it's all from the top and the man has to go down and blah, 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 blah. Well, I have news for you. The actual people in power right now are now shifting more to the middle because they know they have to. And case in point, I brought it along. I told you about this. AOC on the cover of Vanity Fair. You need to read this article. AOC, who is kind of the queen of progressives, really, if you ask the average progressive, what do you think? If you look at what she's doing now, she's moving away from the extreme the extreme Bernie side to things that can get done.
Right.
And that's imperative.
I was wondering where you're going to go with that with AOC.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping that you weren't going to trash her because she's extremely savvy.
Not at all.
No. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear your perspective on this a little bit, because I do believe that she is the future of Democratic politics, and it may not currently be the situation. She's super young, and but she's tough. And then the way that she will go after everybody. It's not about, she talks about corruption, the things that she's trying to call out. There's a lot of sound bites with certain people about, they're going to ban cows and all this crap, But at the end of the day, when you watch her do her job, she's incredible. And she actually is fighting for her constituents, unlike very many people that we see. And if we have people on the right, I may disagree with their politics, but I'm going to use a Ben Sasse, for example, from Nebraska. Ben Sasse will stand up for what he believes, and he will call out. He'll say, speak truth to power, because if we have leaders like that, we can get back to some kind of normalcy. We can get back to having some kind of integrity, because I truly believe in the duality in the two-party system, because it keeps its checks and balances, and it keeps everybody from going too crazy. So it's interesting to see AOC in your eyes.
In some respect, I mean, I agree with you in some respect. I'm radical, and I'd like to abolish the two-party system completely because of what you're talking about. You have to start bringing people up that get the job done. And it's the two-party system that's given us the Pelosi's and the Mitch McConnells, et cetera, on both sides that are extremes, because they're trying to get reelected. They're trying to, pander to their base. The thing I like about AOC and a number of Republicans, quite frankly, as well, is that they have stopped playing the I have to be, pander to the base thing. We saw some of the ugliest pandering ever with Lindsey Graham and McConnell, all these guys, when they looked like they were actually on the hot seat of maybe not getting elected. It was ugly. It was, pull the curtain back. This is who this guy really is kind of stuff. AOC can be the voice of this new younger generation of leaders, but we need more of them so that there's a broader class. We need some on the Republican side too that are not iconoclastic, rhetoric spewing morons. They are people that are actually trying to get things done. And here's what I like about Biden, and I've said it a million times. The very first thing he did right was to select a person that absolutely undid him in a debate. And that is something that Trump could never do in a million years, not in a billion years. He said, you know what? This young lady is smart. What she said was good. I learned from it, blah, blah, blah. We've heard all the rhetoric of why he chose Kamala. But what we have is that works across the aisle, has always worked across the aisle, and knows how the politics work. So I think that whether or not we're dealing with Democrats or Republicans or progressives or QAnons, or I don't even know what they call themselves, the extreme right these days, they're not conservatives. They're not anything. They're their own box. But bottom line is, at some point, we are facing enough global issues and economic issues and the kinds of things that can really destroy this company. That was Freudian.
Right.
But that if they don't start working together, we're never going to get it done. This latest thing of relief that's still stalled after months now is a case in point. People need that relief package now.
Yeah, and
this is a horrible winter.
I don't know what's happening with unemployment currently, because I got unemployment when we had the 2-month shutdown, and then I went back to work, and I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to push through, and we're still there. We had flirted with
delayed.
We were flirting with the idea of taking the month of December off in solidarity with some of the other businesses. We're actually going to go ahead and push through because we're like we talked about at the beginning of this. We've been taking every precaution in the barbershop. I feel like closing the shop would only hurt people that just want a haircut. It's so valuable for people to go out and be social. And it's one of the things that I benefited from being in the barbershop. Now, the point is that with this unemployment and then freezes on rent, which doesn't, it just accumulates. I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't have to pay my rent this month. I'm like, oh no, you do. You just have to pay it later. And so, I mean, I was able to, and one thing that if you are listening, that you can do this, if you have a car payment and you do it through a credit union, especially, and major banks are doing it as well. You can call them and be like, look, I can't make my car payment, and they'll, put it back a month, and you still accrue interest, but you're not, I mean, they'll work with you. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but the rental freezes mixed with the CARES Act is expired at this point. I think it's done in December. And so the extra bonus of however much a month or a week is going to be gone. And I don't think people understand what's coming. I think we're going to see the biggest increase in homelessness that we've ever seen. I think there's going to be, if we don't take this serious, you have people with COVID now. I read today that in Vancouver that there was an anti-mask shopping day where everybody got together and were like, we will shop without masks. And it's like, you're murdering people, dude. Like, you're literally, so if we don't take this COVID thing serious, we're going to see people dying in the streets because hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. And that's not doom and gloom fear tactics. That's a fact. It's interesting because you were my guest.
My future son-in-law, my future son-in-law works for the VA hospital up in Portland, and he's the lead guy for all of this stuff in regards to their trauma care. And so he knows what's going on in the state. And he also he does shifts over at Seaside as a way to help out over there because they're shorthanded. You can't believe the numbers. I mean, most of these places have got 2 or 3 beds. There's something like 17 available beds in all of the Portland metro area right now. 17 in the Portland metro area. So we are seeing, people that are saying, I'm tired of this, I can't do this anymore, there's this fatigue, blah, blah, blah. The reality is this Thanksgiving thing, the shop season, all of this, with people going inside and being forced indoors because it's cold now, it's going to get way worse. But to your point, we're seeing huge increases in emergency food boxes, in homelessness, in people that are for the first time homeless. And they don't know how to do it. It's really, really scary out there. And the joblessness thing, they keep saying the economy's coming back. No, the economy came back because a bunch of people that weren't getting sustainable income type jobs anyway were brought back to do a bunch of grunt work. And so the numbers said, oh no, all these jobs came back. No, a bunch of people came back and got one of the 3 jobs they used to have. The numbers don't play out.
And because of the unemployment benefits, this is where I fight back with people when they talk about we have to be anti-socialist in our political arguments. What worked during this whole COVID situation was democratic socialism. I mean, these situations where people were suffering, that we give them money, a lot of people were making more money on unemployment than they made before. And people will say that. And usually it's the people that make a couple dollars an hour more that are that mad about it because they're like, what about me? But the reality is that it's like, this is saving our country because it props up people, keeps them home, keeps them satisfied. The CARES Act was extremely successful in helping people. There's a ton of flaws with it. There's a ton of, buyout or corporations that benefited. That's disgusting. And we could be here all day to talk about that. But, this is what's so frustrating is they talk about the Democrats. They never do the do nothing Democrats. The reality is that they've already passed a second round of CARES Act through the Congress, and Mitch McConnell refuses because he's a little turtle that he refuses. I don't know what's going on with his hands. Maybe he can't he can't sign anything. No, but,
he's just an obstructionist, period. He's an obstructionist from the get-go.
And so when we talk about this argument, progressive versus moderates inside of the Democratic Party and the kind of on the president situation, yes, I agree that maybe moderate was the right answer. Down ticket, I believe progressive is the right answer. And there's no question. And here's why I think that. In Kentucky, we saw Brooker, I think is his name, Charles Brooker, that was running against Amy McGrath in the primary that could have unseated Mitch McConnell. Now, a little bit too little too late for Brooker, that he was pushing really hard and almost took out Amy McGrath. And then once it went to the general, there was no excitement. There was no excitement for that candidate.
Right.
So when
that was part of the problem, though, is that we watched them, again, eat their young, eat one another, cannibalize one another, just like our 2-year stupid. Don't get me started on that.
I just it's important to say a lot of times when I have you on to talk about politics, we're covering a national topic. One of the you seem to cover a lot of national stuff and be interested in national politics. On a local level, I think pushing progressive ideas, especially in Lane County, because the number one issue in Lane County is houselessness and the cost of living or of housing, because there is zero affordable housing. I have 2 stepsons, one is 18 and one is 20. They're in and out of trying to stay here at their dad's, but they're also trying to find an apartment, and they're trying to make it work, and it's just impossible. It's not the same way it was when we were 18. When you were 18, it was, you guys went to school in like a schoolhouse with 6 people or wherever it was, but on a little house on the prairie. No, but so I don't know. I'm just kidding, but it's just so much different, and it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing goes. The Trump transition into the Biden thing, I think it's hurting things, but at the end of the day, nothing that Trump is going to do is going to benefit the Biden administration. I'm confident in Biden's ability to appoint reasonable people. I know that there's been some gripe from the progressives that a couple of the appointees are, have been basically in their minds bought and paid for by oil companies, but I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that just because somebody donates to your campaign that's an oil company, that means that you cave to them. Because the way that politics work in this country, I know I had a girlfriend years ago that was a college student at the U of O, that she was a geophysics major. She published theories that there was water on Mars. She was extremely accomplished. She was the keynote speaker at her own graduation. And she was paid, her schooling for grad school was paid for by an oil company. And she told them flat out, I'm not going to go work for Exxon. And the reason I bring that up is that just because somebody pays for you, they're like hoping, they're crossing their fingers, and they do this as a tax deduction in the way that they manipulate them. So it's not that cut and dry.
Companies of that size sprinkle money everywhere. I mean, the same with the NRA, everybody else. What we need to do is go back to the open laws where you could see exactly who donated where and which PACs, and open that same box with the PAC money, because that money is as dirty as it comes. That's where you can hide millions and millions of dollars from individual donors that can't do it any other way. But what it keeps coming back to is that none of these issues are black and white at all. No, they are not left or right. They are not anything. And we've got to get out of that box of labeling people. How you label people, in my estimation, from now on, is what have you done? What are you doing? What do you want to get done? That's all I care about. So this whole thing of being branded and carrying around the extreme left or the extreme right or the whatever, that gets you elected, then what? Who cares? I mean, again, term limits, we need those. There's a bunch of this stuff. So anyway, we're meandering a bit, but yeah.
Well, I wanted to have you on just to kind of discuss some of the different things. Before we get out of here, I want to mention the Georgia Senate race. This is basically going to decide the future direction of our country, at least the near future. Do you have a prediction in Georgia? I mean, there's 2 seats. If the Democrats pick up both, then it's a 50-50 split in the Senate, which means that Kamala Harris would be the tie-breaking vote, which means that you would probably make Obamacare include the public option, which means that, just all these different things that are maybe not I want healthcare, Medicare for all, but if that's not going to happen, we need the next best thing, but what is your take on Georgia?
To be honest with you, I think we'll be lucky to pick up one of the seats. If we pick up 2, it'll be a godsend. I'm not as, I hate to say this because I may have to eat my words. I'm not as down about if we don't get those, we'll never get anything done again. Because again, I think this administration is known for working across the aisles. They're inside the box. Kamala Harris is a senator. She knows these people.
You're talking about this? the Biden
administration. Yeah, I'm talking about the rest of what happens after Georgia, one way or the other. If we get both seats, great. We might be able to get some stuff done. But may I remind people that we have a supermajority after Obama was elected and got nothing done, and saw the Affordable Care Act get watered down to such a degree because of Pelosi and Reid and people like that. So I don't have a lot of faith in anybody getting anything done. If you look at the track record of Congress over the last 12 years, or 20 years for that matter, but certainly the last 12, it's not great, period. No. And including the time that Obama was, doing well. The thing that gives me hope is that Biden works across the aisles. Kamala Harris has been in there. The kinds of people they'll be working with understand the grave importance of getting something done. And I think that if God actually keeps working at this, McConnell will get COVID. There's just some of these people need to go away. That's all there is to it. They're flat out obstructionists. Fox News needs to go. I mean, I could really go down the road of what our real problems are and why they are what they are.
So predictions. So I want to say my prediction of what we're going to see in the next couple of years. I think Trump is finally going to lose, and I think that we might actually see Fox doing some things that kind of save this. This is bold, that could potentially save the country, because Trump is going to go after Fox. Trump is going to create his own TV channel, and so this is the direction of the future of the GOP. I don't think that that Fox is going to go down the QAnon, maybe with some of their people, but I think that we're going to see a shift in the way that Fox does things. It's going to be Fox versus Trump, and so they're not going to have time to be attacking the AOCs as much, even though it's for ratings. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I've been wrong every time before, so there's no reason to listen to my predictions. But
you want a broadcaster's view on that?
Sure.
Remember, my whole world's from broadcasting.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, what I watch is trigger points and things that make you go whoa, and you take a look at the deeper reasons for them. So in this last 3 weeks, what we've seen is Fox come out and be the first one to call Arizona during the election. You saw them come out and call Georgia. Down the road, they were calling before the AP. They were calling, before a lot of other news organizations. But more importantly, when you read how they phrase things, and I posted one thing on Facebook where I just kind of went, oh my God, because it came out and said, look, all of Trump's stuff is baseless. It has no, it's not even connected to reality. And, when Tucker Carlson starts going, well, I don't know, this seems a little crazy, now you've got kind of everybody except for, Sean Hannity, who's totally broken. There's a couple guys that basically have to go with the Fox old school ship because they aren't smart enough to do anything else. Right. But bottom line is, Fox is shifting. You can feel the shift happening. They're shifting toward the middle a little bit because they realize they can't make it on just the crazies, because they lost a ton of their most ardent viewers when they started calling the election early. Yeah. So these guys are going to look for the Trump thing. You're kind of forgetting one little detail that may or may not implode Trump's plan. That's called the Southern District of New York, and the entire mess that he's involved with taxes. Right. I think that's going to keep him very busy. When Ivanka came out yesterday, basically sounding like her dad, saying that this is basically a witch hunt, and how come they're being intrusive in our business practices? It's like, yeah, well, because you broke the law. This is the same group of people that can no longer ever have a nonprofit organization because they were sanctioned by the state of New York.
Well, Anthony Scaramucci, who has been really interesting to see him doing.
There you go.
Anthony Scaramucci for 11 days was the press secretary for the White House under Trump, and he's been doing the rounds. And it's interesting. I actually like Anthony Scaramucci. Again, he's the type of person I believe that if you disagree on policy, that's fine. You can have those conversations. But he's a reasonable human being at the end of the day. That's what it seems like, at least. You know, there's the Mitt Romneys, there's people that I actually can disagree with on policy, but I actually respect. But Anthony Scaramucci was drilling that point home. He's like, said exactly the same thing. He said Donald Trump is going to be pretty busy come January 21st, and it's literally going to be that fast. You know,
well, he knows a lot of the inside stuff in regards to the business and the tax codes and those kinds of things. What's interesting is I think people lumped Scaramucci in with Giuliani and that ilk. He's not that guy. No. You know, he actually went to college and worked hard and actually did really well and actually did go to VA school and actually did, you know, he didn't have anybody shilling for him like Trump did. He's a guy that's self-made. He's a guy that's worked hard to get to where he is. And he understands financially, but he also understands the ins and outs of maneuvering in crisis. This is a guy that actually surprises me every time I see him. I've seen him probably 9 or 10 times in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And even before the election, you know, he surprised me over and over again to the place where it's like, yeah, okay, the mooch knows what's going on. Right. And I'm telling you what, you know, if you follow what's been going on in the Southern District of New York and the IRS, they are sitting on this for a reason.
Right.
They don't want to drop it and allow Trump to give himself a bunch of pardons. They're going to wait and see what happens, you know, on the 21st. Like you said.
That's what Scaramucci was talking about. The last thing that I saw, he was talking about how there's been some mumbling behind the scenes that he's heard. And I'm paraphrasing, so I could botch this a little bit, but he said that he was basically hearing of a deal where Trump would like, okay, I'd be willing to talk transition if you can talk kind of working towards eliminating some of the prosecutorial, you know, stuff with the district, which I don't even think that really covers. And he addressed this as well. I don't think the federal government has any jurisdiction over what the Southern District of New York does.
They don't.
You know? And so, I mean, this is the irony about this whole Trump thing is that it's like, do you even know how things work? Do you even know, like, you know, the Republican Party forever has been states' rights. And it's been always about that. And, you know, Trump is like, if the state doesn't do what I want, then the federal government will just say, to hell with you. You know, he wants to be king. And
well, no, I think that this latest development of watching this parade of people being summoned, you know, the electors being summoned, and they're all going to the White House and coming away saying, hey, sorry, we're not changing anything.
Right.
Sorry. You know, this has got to be the most humiliating thing that he's ever gone through. There's a joke. I don't know if I told you this joke. I got to relay that Jack Roberts actually passed along, which I thought was hilarious. So Trump goes to Pence and says, look, Mike, here's the deal. This is getting bad. I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign, but I'm going to resign and make you the president if you give me a pardon for everything that's happened in the past and anything that they may uncover in the future. Do we have a deal? Mike kind of sits there and says, sure, I think, yeah. So 2 days later, Trump comes and he says, look, I've submitted my resignation. Here, all I need you to do is sign this piece of paper. And Pence says, well, about that, Mommy and I prayed last night.
Right.
And you just leave it there.
Right.
Because Pence has been very, very silent. He has not been part of this denial train at all. He's been off the radar.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in his career,
it's going to be interesting.
His career is over. A lot of the people's careers are over that were in the last 2 years of this administration, or maybe a year. A lot of the people that were on board at the end, because they're all yes men, you know. I mean, some of the people early on that were jumping ship really fast, they may still have a place. And obviously there's also careers created out of that. Scaramucci's case in point. You know, you got guys like John Bolton, who I still think is a vile human being, but he's doing the rounds in an anti-Trump thing, you know. And it's interesting. He goes into that Lincoln Project area. I don't think he's involved with that, but he goes into that area where he's like, look, I still don't like the Democratic Party, but Joe Biden is the candidate we need right now, which that doesn't bode well for progressives. Anyway, we got to get out of here. So Pat,
Okay.
it's always a good, treat to chat with you. We've had some serious delay with this episode, and I'm glad that we made it through because we were hanging up there a few times. So if you're listening and you made it this far, shout out to you for dealing with some of that. It's a digital world, and the Zoom calls are what they are. I mean, we make the best of it, but at least we're not spreading COVID. So I'm going to end this with a song. And I chose this song because it kind of covers what we're talking about. Plus, he was my first guest, Ender One. So this is a song Ender One made. The video is on YouTube, and I'm sure that you can find it on his website. There'll be a link in the show notes to ender1.com. The song is called One Heartbeat, and it's basically about the division in the country. And I'll let the song speak for itself, but it's very timely and a very, very heavy hitting song. So I chose this to end this because I think coming up at the end of the year, we're seeing a very wounded country, and I really want to find ways that we can get past some of these political things and try to love each other again. And it's really difficult when we can't even be with each other. So we have a lot of work to do in this country. But Patric Miller, thanks a lot for doing this. This is Two Pats in a Pod, Volume 3 on the Spent the Rent podcast. Shout out to my sponsors. This is Ender One with One Heartbeat.
Nowadays, there's so much that I could write. It's hard to know exactly what to write. And I don't think any dictionary has the right words to describe how I'm feeling inside. Cause it's like, what's today's pandemic or disaster? Who's the latest black man killed by a cop? Who's got a new meme so we can have some laughter like this world's funny? Even when it's not. But I still laugh just to cover up the size of these knots I feel inside my gut. I'm standing up now, I've lied down enough, and I'm not buying what these liars want to disguise as love. They tell you if you vote, it'll change things, and if you don't, then you won't get a say in things. So either way, you're controlled by the way of things. Lesser of two evils, or face the shame it brings. Seems pretty fair, doesn't it? Hey, I don't make the rules. They're the government, they say to vote and exercise our right to choose. But is it really a choice? If they control who, that's like saying pick a card when I'm only holding two. And I know they're both jokers, so the joke's on you and all of us. So what's my political stance? I got a middle finger on both hands because I don't wanna play the games we play. I don't wanna say what they say I should say. And I don't wanna go where they say I should go, or do what I'm told, cause you say it is so. See, maybe it's me, but that isn't free. My life ain't as black or as white as you see. I won't turn to leave, I vow solemnly to live life as if we had one heartbeat, like ba-bum, ba-bum. One heartbeat, like ba-bum, ba-bum. One heartbeat, like ba-bum, ba-bum. One heartbeat, just you and me. One heartbeat. And some people already clicked away, and I get it, cause most can't take this talk. I almost didn't say this, went to erase but pause, cause just ignoring pain never once made it stop. See, I don't do this for a playlist or blog. I don't do it for a cosign or A-list or not. I speak my mind, whether it entertains you or not. Like skin, sometimes I wish I could take mine off. How could you not relate? Taking this thought. Humans were made into slaves and were bought, and even children were shackled into chains that were locked, and we still got the nerve to minimize the pain that it caused. We only think about who's famous or not, but think about the names that never got a grave or a plot. We want to say it was the old days, but it was not, cause almost daily I see minorities tased or shot by a guy who looks like me, but he's a racist cop, just doing what he's learned. His hate was taught, and I'm not saying all cops are the same, so stop. I think being police is probably the bravest job. There's always a few bad seeds when you're laying down crops, but wait, by that logic, a train of thought, trade shoes for a second, rearrange the plots. What if you were hated for the skin you were gave by God, and I judged you before I knew your name or not? Guilty, and the gavel could be mace or a Glock, or a simple judging stare on a face as you walk into a grocery store. The next day you go to shop. Yeah, to acknowledge that can take a lot, but it's really simple. Are we willing to change or not? That's why I spread my own wings, I won't chase a flock. That's why I don't wear chains, I'd rather break the locks. Cause while you typed up a storm on the last Facebook debate you lost, politicians were changing laws. But who the f am I to say? But what I do say, I say because I don't wanna play the games we play. I don't wanna say what they say I should say. And I don't wanna go where they say I should go or do what I'm told, cause you say it is so. See, maybe it's me, but that isn't free. My life ain't as black or as white as you see. I won't turn the leaf, I vow solemnly to live life as if we had one heartbeat.